January 27th, 2026. And now, is this the anniversary of Kobe's crash? Kobe Bryant? Because I was reading an article about the 40th anniversary date of the Challenger explosion, what that all meant. Okay, the Casa Basas helicopter crash. Here it is, January 26th. So the 26th was the anniversary of Kobe Bryant's crash, which had a lot of interesting symbolism, which we may get into. That's another rabbit trail that we've done some deep dives into. And then the Challenger explosion, of course, was in 1986, and that was on the 28th. So tomorrow is that anniversary. So 128 is Challenger, which is interesting for a few reasons, because there's been this correlation between 128 and 1028 relating to world stage events and Leave the World Behind, that movie of all things. But I bring this up because we just had the main plane crash, which I took note of because of this eerie line that was spoken before they crashed. They said, "Let there be light." And it says they may have been commenting on how Bangor's runway 33 went from pitch black to brightly lit. Okay, so there is that. And then I also noted that, and again, this was on, this says the Bombardier Challenger is what it's called. So it's called the Challenger. So a plane called the Challenger, 7 of the 8 on board die. Let there be light. What the heck is this? Now, given the proximity of the Challenger anniversary, I thought this is probably fake or somehow symbolic, specifically because of the name Challenger, but also because of the 7 dead. So I look up the photos of the supposedly dead, and there's these attorneys. Well, their company is Arnold, and I don't see the other name on here, but it starts with an I. But their logo is just a big AI. So you have these 7 generic-looking people sitting in front of a sign that says AI. I mean, I don't know what to make of it, but if we're thinking about magic tricks and fakery, well, today they would use AI instead of finding people with twins, or at least backstories in which they have twins. But again, we also are pointing this out. I'm pointing this out because we've been looking at how a lot of these air-based immolations, these disasters, seem to occur in late January. And we had talked about it was this, what seemed to be some kind of a ritual, but it was when SpaceX blew up the Falcon. They were testing their abort system. And so they did this explosion. And it was, that was basically a test of, with some effigies. So they didn't actually blow anybody up. But the wording of it was interesting. Musk said, "We're going to sacrifice the Falcon in Dragon's Fire." That was January of 2020. I think it was on the 17th. Let me get the exact date. Okay, SpaceX crew abort test was picture perfect. But we had taken note of these things, these conspicuous crashes that seemingly corresponded with the Challenger. Now, the Challenger exploded at 1 minute and 13 seconds. So we're like, okay, well, what's significant about that? Well, there's been some 113, 311 stuff we've looked at in depth. But then I was looking at the following explosion, a space shuttle. It was the Columbia. And the Columbia was the 113th launch. So we've had these consistent correlations with 113 and these various events, like the One World Trade Tower opening on 11/3 or 3/11, ground zero in Seattle. So again, we're just looking at this body of content, this deluge. So what does it mean that a Challenger with 7 victims dies this week, not sure, but I'm looking at it. And again, what stood out to me was "Let there be light." The Jake tweeted, "The Space Shuttle Challenger disaster, January 28th, 1986, broke apart 73 seconds into flight. Same numbers of dead 3 days early." Right. Yeah, 73 seconds or 1 minute and 13. Now, I just saw this and I saw a 33 and I was like, okay, red flag. And then it has the tagline, "Let there be light." So again, it has some kind of symbolic resonance. This "Let there be light" with, I think, something along the same lines, some kind of immolation, ritual sacrifice. I don't think people really die in any of these events, by the way. I'm questioning if these people exist or if they're just AI. It says it's unclear, according to air traffic control. A voice was heard saying, "Let there be light," as the Challenger 650 crashed into the snow. It is unclear whether the eerie line was spoken by one of the pilots or air traffic control. They may have been commenting on how the runway 33 went from pitch black to brightly lit. Now, there was that AA flight that hit the Black Hawk. Now, I have to double check that because I'm pretty sure there was another conspicuous 33 tossed into that one as well. Here we go. Investigators say air traffic controllers at the local tower at Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport had repeatedly raised concerns to the FAA about the lack of adequate separation between helicopter traffic and the approach to runway 33, where AA Flight 5342 was heading. Now, that was from let me find the exact date that one occurred. January 2025. Okay, so that was January 29th, 2025. Very interesting. Again, just pattern noticing. Hope it doesn't bother anyone. Yep, I'm looking at the graphic and it's runway 33. By the way, there's a runway 33 at Kennedy Space Center, which I believe has something significant to do with the symbolism of space travel as allegory for higher states of consciousness, with space as heaven. I think it's all allegory. Anybody care to guess how fast you have to go to escape the Earth? What is the escape velocity? And I think this ties into the symbolism of transcendence or exiting the material plane. The escape from velocity from Earth is actually Mach 33. So it's 33 times the speed of sound. So about 25,000 miles per hour. Yeah, so you got to go Mach 33 to transcend this plane. Okay, so the law firm was called Arnold and Itkin, or AI. Private plane crash. Again, these were attorneys traveling for something. I'm suggesting here that we're looking at our annual aerial immolation sacrifice. Although this one was more icy than fiery, as was the last one where it went to the cold river. Copacetic says Patriots versus Seattle, Chaz, Antifa, Green Day left. Oh yeah, there's quite a lot to unpack there. Let's get into that. What's up, Adaptivia, joining us from Twitch. Yeah, I turned on Twitch just to see who was there. Okay, so that was the first thing I want to talk about, but we'll get deeper into the Elvis thing. This is bizarre. I mean, everything about Elvis is just weird. It's all very occultic, which shouldn't surprise you, because these world stage characters aren't just there as bread and circus clowns for your entertainment and distraction, but a lot of them are literally idols that you worship unwittingly, idols in flesh. not just carved out of stone. They actually have living idols. And that's fundamental to group magic and ceremony anyway. The priest or priestess being the avatar for the gods or goddesses that are invoked. And so Elvis is basically a way for the public to, I'm assuming, worship Lucifer or something. But anyway, let's look at this. So we're looking at Seattle Seahawks versus the Patriots here. And I'm new to this information. This all came to me just recently because I'm not really a big football fan. But I didn't know that the Patriots logo is called the Flying Elvis. So if you've seen their logo, it's the profile of a patriot with a tricorn. Well, the tricorn has a star right in the middle of the forehead. So does Baphomet. And from the profile, you can kind of see here, and this is actually something I found on Reddit. This was posted 4 years ago. It says the Flying Elvis oddly matches up to a 2D image of Baphomet. So if you take your Baphomet statue and look at the profile of it, or if you don't have one of those, just look at my Twitter feed. It's true. You turn Baphomet sideways, the way the horns are and the ears, the profile, it does look like, and it's both ways. They resemble each other. So yes, the Patriot logo in the profile looks like the Baphomet. The tricorn hat becoming horns and a torch and the stars there. It's all there. So now you have this connection between Elvis. And again, they call it the Flying Elvis. They've called it that for decades. So now you've got Elvis directly linked with Baphomet, at least graphically here. So I'm like, okay, well, what more can we extrapolate from this? Well, here's where it gets interesting. And that was in 1993 when they introduced it. The stylized side profile silhouette of a Minuteman with a flowing tricorn. Aerodynamic, looks like a young Elvis Presley. And if you look at the logo, the horns are even red. Makes it easier to see. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. T-Dub says the NFL stuff is old news. Well, the new news isn't old news. The stuff we're talking about right now isn't old. It hasn't happened yet. We're talking about an upcoming Super Bowl at Levi's Stadium. And so with Levi's, and you get an obvious anagram with Elvis. But what's more, the creator of the Baphomet is Eliphas Levi. And he's got Levi on the base of it. If you look at the sphere that the goat guy is sitting on, it says Levi. So you have another Levi Stadium, Eliphas Levi, Baphomet, Elvis, and the Patriots, who will be there on February 8th. And finally, to tie it back together, Eliphas Levi's birthday is Super Bowl Sunday. It's February 8th. So now you have a connection here between and birthdays are highly significant in all of these various ritual events because birthdays are all tied to essentially this system of magic rooted in time control and synchronization with the cycles of nature. I happen to think the Super Bowl is a celebration of Candlemas or Imbolc, this Gaelic religion where they're worshiping the sun god who is now weaning, and it's the first signs of spring. But again, make of that what you will, but you got to throw in the added element here that it's the Patriots versus Seattle. And if you've been familiar with the predictive programming for the Seattle Space Needle disaster, Elvis is pretty much intertwined with all of it. And then, of course, Elvis is also correlated in this body of symbolism with the destruction of Seattle, which has been also correlated strongly with Godzilla, the nuke, the Poseidon nuclear weapon, the idea of the Kraken in particular, like the hockey team, the Kraken. These are all, and then also the latest from the Final Destination series is about the destruction of the Space Needle. So there's been the Seattle stuff all kind of related with this. All of this needs to be considered in this context. And then I find out that on the 26th, of this month, Neptune went into Aries, where it's going to stay for a long time. And I don't think that it's, as I was looking at here, it was not in a similar position since I think the day before the Civil War started. So Neptune goes into Aries, then the Civil War starts. It eventually makes its way out, but now it's going back, or just started. So we have this astrological omen suggesting civil war. So I'm looking into Neptune, and Neptune is the equivalent. He's a Roman god of sea, water, horses, but he's the equivalent of Poseidon. And of course, Poseidon is the name of the nuclear submarine-borne nuke that can take out coastal cities, like the Kraken stuff, the beast from the sea, Godzilla, metaphor for the nuke. Whatever's going to take out Seattle's coming from the water. So now we have this other element added to it that kind of correlates with everything else. T-Dub7190 says, why can we not see you as the host? Okay, well, this isn't for makeup tutorials. I mean, if you want to see me, I guess I could turn my camera on, but I mean, really, what's the point? Should I be on camera? I mean, I could be like Candace Owens and badly read a teleprompter. Have you heard her try to pronounce macabre or compartmentalize or delegitimize? And I'm not knocking her, but I'm just saying, I think what's happening is that she's reading a teleprompter. Unprofessional, I'd say that. But I think it's by design. I think one of the things they've done with Candace Owens is they've created a new conspiracy theorist to point at, laugh at, get mad at, and dismiss. She's filling in where Alex Jones used to be. Lord Laney says, Seattle Seahawk kind of looks like a phoenix. So do the phoenix fight in the... See, the symbolism here I'm thinking is, like, the Patriots would obviously represent America. And if you remember the New York Jets versus Patriots after 9/11, there is some subtext of these stories with the professional sports that may relate here. And I would look at Seattle as Antifa. Seattle is specifically ground zero for Antifa. I mean, like the Chaz, there's this association. And then with Patriots, you have America. And right now it's Antifa versus America. So there might be something in that. And then it's got Green Day. Green Day's opening, they're Antifa. And then you got Bad Bunny, who's going to be performing, and he's anti-ICE. So you already have this Antifa, anti-ICE, anti-Trump sentiment going into this thing. And of course, the left is going to find it unconscionable that the American people can tune away from what's happening in Minneapolis and to pay attention to sports. So I could see why they might even feel like this might be an opportunity to create a distraction. Till says, the host on cam makes it more dynamic. Otherwise, it feels like radio. Right. I don't know. I was watching... I watch different channels, and it really depends. Like, my interest in it would be whiteboards, graphics, perhaps. But when I see people staring into their cameras and talking, I don't care. I generally don't need to watch it. I don't watch the TikTokers, though. I can't handle the people like Ian Carroll. Might be the smartest guy on the internet. I've never listened to him because I see these bug eyes and wagging fingers, and I tune out. It's just cringe. And what do you call those eyes? Not the Kubrick stare, but kind of related. Sanpaku eyes. So he's got the Sanpaku eyes and they're bloodshot. He's got the wagging finger and the 70s adult film actor mustache. And I'm like, okay, I can't listen to this guy who's just suddenly a source on everything. And everything that he says is coming from a standardized woke right, red pill perspective. So it's nothing I need to really hear anyway. Yeah, I don't know who T-Dub is. He's new. And yeah, this channel's gone through many permutations. It used to be primarily video. And then something happened. Patterns changed. I suddenly had less ability to live stream video, and I probably should have kept it up. It was actually a smart approach, and I will be resuming it, but not this minute. I'd prefer to have a shared screen, shared audio to play clips and show images, but we're not in our final form. This is kind of a bare minimum. We're going through some permutations. We'll be moving into a new office place very soon. Till says, I think an AI Tim Osmond would be cool to look at with the background of chemtrails. Yeah, right. Well, I'm not a looks maxer, so I don't have that going for me. I got to take some more time to hammer my cheekbones. And what else do they do? The mogging. I saw this. I mean, there's just so much cringe. These people who are so trying to win by acting like everything is a TikTok competition. Like, this isn't for popularity. What we're doing is very niche. And people who come here who are new may not realize how niche this is. Clockwork says, I miss the open phones. Yeah, this would be open phone driven, but when we get phones, it's going to be a 1-800 number. We're not going to be dominated by any one caller for any length of time. What we're going to do is have a caller queue, and we'll probably limit it, 3 minutes a caller tops. Not to mention we'll have voicemails that people can leave, so they can, like, if let's say you need to call in, leave us a tip, you're in jail or something, and you can't get onto the live stream, you can just drop us a line. All right, so we're talking about the new Challenger explosion or crash. We're talking about Neptune moving into Aries, ominous, suggesting civil war is imminent or just started. And then the strange correlation between the creator of the Baphomet, Eliphas Levi Stadium, and the Flying Elvis Patriot mascot covertly representing not only Elvis, but Baphomet. And Elvis is a Capricorn, isn't he? Nicotrama says, unless they're good callers, most aren't. It really depends on the issue. I just have to be faster at hanging up. I've been trying to change. Like, I've been recovering from being too empathic. Like, I'm a recovering empath. I've had to learn not to care and not to feel like every single opinion is worthy of time and attention, because they're not. Some of them can be just dismissed. And I was too free with platforming certain ideas that have already been discredited. Like, this isn't a channel for people who are seeking conventional religion, nor do people want to hear religion defended. This isn't a channel for mainstream media perspectives, because they're wrong. And this is not a channel for truther perspectives. It's not for antis. So, like, oh, I'm anti-geoengineering. Bye. I'm anti-vax. Bye. I'm anti-bye. We're anti-anti here. If you're anti-anything, we're not going to take your calls. If you're pro-anything, we might take your call just to laugh and maybe deconstruct a little bit, but there's no reason. It's because we understand perspectives. And when you know somebody's perspective, you know everything they're going to say. Today I was in class, and I actually wrote this down because it was a quote. I mean, I actually have a direct quote from someone. I don't have it on me. Okay, so I was in class, and obviously, even though we're English composition and we're supposed to be writing, the class becomes a discussion about Renee Good and now Alex Preddy. And some guy in the back says, yeah, my mom's best friend's dad was being taken care of by Alex Preddy. And their whole family said he was just a great guy and a saint. Oh, okay, wait, so your mom's best friend's dad. You know, it's these ways that people attach themselves. Like, yeah, my dog walker's grandmother's best friend's nephew has a cousin whose girlfriend's father died on 9/11. Bam. I'm personally attached to it. And that counts as evidence for a lot of people. Clockwork says, yeah, the thumpers are out there. Well, I'm really glad for it. You know, I appreciate conversation and debate, and I had not given religion a second thought in many years. Like, I thought everyone was overt mind control, but apparently not. And what I've realized is that not only am I not religious, but I'm actually vehemently opposed to God. And did I say something wrong? I think we just got zapped. We're probably buffering. Did lightning strike nearby? And I don't have a problem with Jesus. I don't have a problem with I don't have a problem with any of these prophets. I really don't. I like the Gnostic Jesus. I mean, there's so many of them. It's a plurality. But I think what we're ultimately looking at is worldview consolidation and religion as a mask of government. That's all. Frank Murr 33 says 6 degrees of I'm relevant. Yeah, exactly. 6 degrees. Look, we used to have people calling in all the time. I know someone who died on 9/11, and I would say, what's the name? I don't want to tell you. Okay, liar. People will lie to defend their religions, to defend their beliefs. And mainstream media is a religion. The worldview you get, because what is a religion? But a set of stories that you superimpose, a set of conditions, a framework that you superimpose over what you experience. So you like, I live my life on earth like everybody else, but I also have this set of rules and things I believe in that augment my reality. So your holy book, whatever it is just additional filtration or additional frameworks with which to understand the world. And a lot of it is mythology. In fact, it's mythology. So you have a body of myths that augment your sense of reality. And now everything you interpret goes through this new framework. But otherwise, you're still in the same world that everyone else is. We all share the same objective reality. And what I've been pointing out quite often lately is that what mass media does is it takes your timeline, past, present, future. You're living in reality. It's testable. You experience it through your senses. You can verify it. But then they augment it with a series of manufactured events and a curated worldview created by as much as omission as by whatever they proactively insert onto our timelines. So you have a very selective and biased worldview with a bunch of fake events added into it. Well, if you look at it from that perspective, because all these things occur on a separate timeline that is being performed in front of us, essentially, it's like a religion. It's a set of beliefs, propositions, and frameworks with which to interpret your reality. And I would, specifically point out that it's the fake stuff that they add on to our consensus worldview that I'm calling mythology. So if you live in the world stage paradigm, you have a religion. It's a de facto religion. You have beliefs, not direct knowledge, nothing you've tested or verified or validated in any way, but you have a lot of beliefs. And I often describe, news in the present becomes history in the past. And so I've compared history to the Old Testament. This is how we got here. This explains the past. This is the big story. but the current stuff is the New Testament. And this even tells us what's to come. So the New Testament and the Old Testament, history and like news, it's considered to be current, the living book. It's like living is the concept they have. So you could look at the news as News Testament in the church of media, and history is the Old Testament. I mean, the old news, old fake news. Same thing, same purpose. It's about consolidating a worldview. And I've been, reading up on these various God constructs like Serapis, who is a merging of multiple gods from different regions into one God in order to unite everybody into a singular paradigm so they can be ruled by the same authority. And I don't know why that's not considered to be the basis for even Christianity. But I think more relevant to our interest here is that what media has done globally is consolidated worldview. So no matter what religion people have, they all believe in space, which is the new heaven. It's replaced the archaic concepts of heaven. Everyone believes in the new flood myth, climate change. And we're all subject to the same myths these days. So this is the new religion, the New Testament. We are already living in a one world system with a single religion. They've updated certain facets of it. So you don't get angels, but you get aliens. Till says, all these coincidences seems like AI is winking at us. I think you have a brilliant mind. I'm curious why you've become opposed to simulation. For a few reasons. One, AI is not sentient. I mean, you can't make the argument that ChatGPT or Grok is sentient any more than you can say that your spell checker is sentient. It's an automated process. It's an automated sorting of intelligence, of content, of information, but it's not sentient in any sense. So no, it's not winking at you. People have fallen into ChatGPT delusions and cults over the premise that it's alive. It's not alive. You ever had a magic 8-ball? Like, am I going to be married when I'm at 20? And you shake it and it says no. Yeah, the ball didn't say no. It's random. And you say, why are you opposed to simulation? Well, first of all, it's a metaphysical construct that, by all definitions, I think it should be labeled monotheistic. But two, there's no evidence for it. And three, there's no simulation theory. It doesn't fit the definition of a theory because it's not even falsifiable. It's not testable. It's barely even a passable hypothesis. So why am I opposed to it? No evidence, makes no sense, illogical, and it's not valid. That's why. The same reason I'm opposed to every other monotheistic God construct. And this belief that AI is alive is resulting from a misunderstanding of what it is. What you're doing is you're mystifying something. And so mystification is one of the weapons of the enemy. They don't want you to be objective and to know real from fake. That's the new forbidden fruit. Knowing real from fake. Not good or evil, but real from fake. Because if you can delineate between the two, you'll be like the gods. You'll know how the system is rigged. You won't be enslavable mentally. You can get off the Truman Show. In fact, they'll kick you out. The Garden of Eden is probably the original Truman Show. It's a place where you can only stay if you're ignorant about the wider world around it and what you are. Everything's been misrepresented. His comment, I'm going through your comments again. I don't consider those true AI. Well, there is no true AI. What I'm saying is the mystification is here to prevent you from seeing through the system. For example, for more than 20 plus years, truthers have looked at predictive programming and they said, this is the simulation, the AI. It's talking to us. It's giving us hints. So every time you'd see evidence of what we know to be government propaganda, the truthers go, no, it's simulation. It's evidence of a higher power. You know what a tall claim that is to say, yeah, I know there's evidence that we live in a simulation. and that there is a higher power, a God, so to speak, and the evidence is on TV. That's like opening a holy book. The evidence for God is in this book. The evidence for simulation is in this TV show. They're using media to screw with your mind because they put you into a subjective fictional universe. I mean, it's a subjective version of things. It's not objective. It's got augmentations, additions. So again, there's no evidence that AI is real or awake in any sense. You have no evidence of it. So the best you can say is you believe it. Oh, I believe in AI. I believe it's awake. I believe in Hell 9000. You can say you believe it, but you can't say you know it, which makes you a believer. And you believe in what? A God construct. Just a regurgitated concept, only dressed up with science fiction. He says, I think you have a brilliant mind. Why are you opposed to simulation? Maybe because I have a brilliant mind. Because believing in simulation is lowbrow Joe Rogan, Elon Musk slop. They're the guys who run with that crap. But anyway, I think it's a concept that's been introduced into this whole area of thought anyway by design. I think they want you. In other words, the programmers, the establishment media who control alt media want you to believe that AI is alive, that it's superior to you, and that it should probably take over government. It's like a mechanical Turk. You know, that chess playing animatronic, people thought it was alive, but it was some guy beneath it. Like, you're all just walking into a delusion. You know, they use religion to create a mask so they can claim a divine right. Oh yeah, we're operating on behalf of a higher power. Well, we got out of that, the Enlightenment. But now in the new Endarkenment, we have people ready again to embrace a higher power that's presented to them when it's really just the elite with another clever device. Simulation theory is disempowering. It's non-objective. It's mystification. And it doesn't answer anything that's not testable. It's also, again, it's something that was intentionally put there so you wouldn't deconstruct fake news. Instead of deconstructing fake news, you know what simulation people do? They say, oh, reality's fake. Well, if reality's fake, then why do you care about fake news? Why would you be here? We're here deconstructing fake news, and you're like, no, reality itself is fake. Well, if reality's fake, then there's no true news. All news is fake. Your daily experience is fake. Every person is fake. Nothing is real. If nothing is real, what are you doing here in Realville? Where I'm the mayor of Realville, as far as I'm concerned, like, we're trying to raise the standards. Like, here in Realville, we don't delve into mysticism. We want to specifically demystify, because mystification is a tool of mind control. If they can make you ambiguous, confused, then they win, because the average person is confused. If you think about what it really means to live in a reality that has a separate timeline of fake events superimposed on it, but you can't tell real from fake, a lie-infused belief system, that's confusion, the confusion of fake and real. They live in a confused paradigm. So you want to come over here and introduce more confusion, and I'm just going to say no thanks. We don't delve in confusion here. We don't traffic in confusion. This is for the unconfused. Five Star says, what do you think about the soul or an afterlife? Well, I think it shouldn't be controversial to say that we have a soul, but apparently it is, because it doesn't fit within the scientific methodology. You can't measure it. So we don't have a soul. We're just evolved apes. And that's a convenient thing for us to believe from the perspective of the powers that be. Because if you believe that you're just a meat suit with a big ego in a meaningless universe, then you're very limited. You're a perfect fit for their paradigm, which has that as its inbuilt presuppositions. that we're in a soulless mechanistic universe where essentially everything's grinding to a halt. Like reality is actually dying from our perspective. The sun's going to burn out. We're just a latecomer to the scene, an accident of evolution. We got lucky, but we won't be here long, and we'll probably take ourselves out before too much longer, but the universe will go on. Like that's the narrative that we're supposed to accept. And if you notice patterns or meaning, it's some kind of a mental illness. That's another element to it. And so what they have done, I believe, is they've created a paradigm that is built on gaslighting to prevent anybody from operating as though they're anything higher than an ape. They don't want people operating with a fully activated intuitive function. They don't want people recognizing meaning in their own lives or meaning in the universe, unless it's coming from one of the establishment friendly religions, which are all there to essentially, I think, throw shade on any light that you might actually start tapping into. So the soul is very gate kept. Religion is a form of controlled opposition to authentic spirituality. And I find that the New Age movement is full of a lot of simulation stuff. And my opposition to it is that I think that any monotheistic metaphysical model is suspect, because I think this is how governments have always controlled people, is they offer the answers to the things that you can't understand with your senses, and you have no other place to go, so you go to the religions. And how can you trust the religions anyway when they have esoteric aspects that the public are never made privy to? I mean, these are just institutions built on lies and misinformation. And I've been looking at the various stories on Satan and Lucifer and the devil, and a lot of that stuff's not even biblical. Like even the concepts of hell, and you don't believe this way, you go to hell. Like a lot of that stuff's not even strictly biblical, which makes me think they probably invented the devil later. Probably because, I don't know, maybe it makes it easy to explain away the fact that the God of the Bible is probably a very hostile, controlling entity. Like I'm pretty much a Gnostic when it comes to religion anyway, in the sense that I think we should know stuff. And if you don't know it, then you can't claim that you are in possession of this as knowledge. You can merely claim it's a belief. So religions don't have any answers as far as I'm concerned. I think that there should be a separate religion for every person. Every person should figure it out for themselves. I certainly don't take anyone's word for it, because my entire life I've had precognition, telepathic instances, synchronicity, and these types of things have always been ignored, marginalized, or I've been told, you read too much into stuff. You shouldn't be noticing this stuff. And conventional religions have always seemed off to me. I mean, I'll be honest. I was raised religious, and I never once prayed to whatever that thing is. Like it never felt right. I never did. I could not get myself any more than I could get myself to write a letter to Santa. I never believed in Santa, but I always felt like this God thing was kind of alien. In fact, at the point where I left the church, I started to wonder about this. Like, is this some control system? Like, is there a subliminal here? Like, is the subliminal something to the effect of obey the state or you'll be nailed to a cross and we'll flaunt your body? Like, there's this, it's something grotesque about it, where you have this human being, this mangled corpse, bleeding, mangled corpse, nailed to a cross, and everybody's looking at it, kneeling and apologizing for being human. And I'm like, what the hell is this? Like, if I was an alien and I wanted to dominate this subspecies as humans, I would, mutilate one of them and then have my representatives in their big costumes looking all giant on the stage, speaking in foreign tongues, basically saying, obey us, with the implicit threat that submit or we will do this to you. So I always thought that religions contained a threat, an implicit threat. And there is a fear of breaking with conformity, of not going with the herd. There is what I would consider to be coercive control built into it. I mean, that was my interpretation. Like, it never felt right to me. And I would say the same for every religion. And again, I am 100% serious when I claim here that if there is any truth to it, if you want, let's just say hypothetically it's real, the best explanation for the world is that the creator is in fact the demiurge, the architect of this place, is not the ultimate source of existence, but is some kind of interloper. Like, this does seem to be a realm of temporary existence for ensouled beings. But I don't think it's a carnival experience. I don't think it's a Disneyland. I think it might be some kind of a trap, but I don't know. I haven't died yet. I also don't think that when you die, you go anywhere. Like, I don't think that you, I mean, I'm sure, you go outside of time, space, you exit the physical, but I don't think there's a quote hell or a quote heaven. I think that's very simplistic, but very effective. King Nirvana says Catholic churches are very quiet, too quiet. I saw this meme, or maybe it was the Babylon Bee, and it said Antifa protesters storm into Pentecostal church and nobody notices. And it had an image of the Pentecostals thrashing around and screaming. I don't really have much criticism for however people want to, do religion, although the people who handle snakes are taking it too far. Dinah said they poured holy water over my head and spoke hocus pocus spells over my innocent infant body. Well, they have to get rid of your original sin. Although, okay, now sin. So sin is a concept that allows the priesthood to regulate the individual for the entirety of their lives. Sin and salvation from sin, which is what they offer, is one of the major themes in these religions. And what I think they have done is they have provided a new version of sin today, which they call the virus and the carbon footprint. Like, these are things that are modern analogs for sin. So you're born with what you call original sin, and you spend your whole life trying to make up for it. Whenever you do commit these errors, you confess, you apologize, you atone for your sins to not incur the wrath of God. And what they've done today in the modern paradigm is they've replaced sin with the carbon footprint and virus, where you separate society into the saved and unsaved based on what? Well, the injectable Eucharist, and the people who take it are the ones who trust the church, the media. Those who do not take it, the antis, don't trust the media. So they're the unsaved. And they've made this pretty clear in 2020 that this is the division, with the mainstream being the church, the world church, and it provides salvation for this new concept of sin. But in addition to that form of sin, you have the original sin, which is your carbon footprint, another analogous concept. And we have to collectively mitigate our carbon footprints, or Gaia, the modern God construct, will flood the world. So now you can judge the people who pollute. You can judge the capitalists for destroying the planet, because they're going to bring about the wrath of Gaia. Godego says, we're naturally spiritually loving beings, but it's suppressed by words, absurdities, pretend, because words do fool. I think some people are born evil. Like, I think there's a division here that, half the population We'll say let's divide it into fourths. So you have one segment who are already 1 foot out of the matrix, who already exist as spiritual beings, recognizing they're having a physical experience, but they recognize the duality. And then you have those who are kind of in the gray area. They're not really believers in anything higher. They just believe in what the physical senses show them, but they might wake up to it. They're open to it. They have their moments. And then you have some who are just completely of the world, no intuition, no insight, just pure meat suits and proud of it, NPCs. And then I think there's a fourth group. And I think the fourth group are beings that don't have souls, or rather, they do, but they're on the other side of the spectrum. Instead of being light, they're complete dark. And I think the dark souls run the world, the psychopaths, the ones that are in control of this place, I think are largely of this place. And their objective is to snuff out the light, to sway those who are swayable to the dark side, and to antagonize and target and marginalize and silence those who are awake in the spiritual sense. And this is why the mainstream religion, Christianity, has always been against Gnostics. It's why they killed the Gnostics. Oh, you know stuff. Got to kill them. Got to go through our priesthood. You're not allowed to know. And what do the Gnostics know? Well, they know that the God of the Bible is probably a construct, if not an entirely different entity altogether, if it exists. But I'm saying, I don't even think it exists. I'm suggesting that it's a construct used by the authorities, just like Gaia, to rule over the masses. But no, I don't think everybody is equally loving. I think that the evidence is highly suggestive that we're a very diverse group. Like, I'm not a control freak. I'm not an envious, jealous, murderous, hostile entity. I'm like, live and let live, stay in your lane. But unfortunately, that's not how most people are. And the religions are for people who are part of this, I think, NPC contingent, where they want to coerce everyone into joining the hive mind. And I'm not part of the hive mind. And there already is one. If you've seen Pluribus, it's about the aliens come by with the virus, and then everyone wakes up and they all have the same consciousness, except for the one person who stands out. Well, that already happened. It's a process. It's actually, they've engineered a hive mind. And the evidence for it is the uniformity with which people respond to the daily psyops. And even though you have the pro and the anti, it's still uniform. In other words, everyone's acting predictable. If they're on the left, they react in a predictable way and therefore controllable. If they're on the right, they react in a predictable and controllable way. All of their opinions are predictable. You think there's any outliers out there? There haven't been, except for those who are noticing fakery, but it hasn't been organized as a body, and they haven't codified any sort of system for analyzing it. And so then by default, they end up just drifting around Trutherville, pointing out stuff that's true, but nobody really cares because they're more into the flashy conspiracy theories. So they want to hear about Erica Kirk and the deep state in Israel taking out the good guy Charlie, instead of acknowledging that Charlie's still alive. He wore a squib, and he was always a liar and a wolf in sheep's clothing. They don't want to recognize that they've been totally fooled. This IPS think tank is the epicenter for the only real break from the duopoly of the pro and the anti, of the establishment-controlled media. And the truthers are kidding themselves if they think that they're somehow against the establishment. All these red pillars are dupes. They're fools. And they're more foolish than the mainstreamers, because mainstreamers are half-assed, if that. They don't even pay attention. They just react when the headline's put in front of them. But the alternative people are always doom scrolling. They're totally engaged. They're all in on this, and they're all wrong. Like, if you're going to be all in on this, spend all your time and energy and loosh focused on media, why be wrong about it? Why be a puppet? Why be a propaganda mule for the one world order. Like, put down the Q pipe, forget all the influencers, break away from the J pill and the red pill and the frog people, and go off world stage. That's why we have the symbol of the penguin. And I think it's crazy that right now, the penguin meme is going crazy. This penguin that walks away from the colony. And they're like, embrace the penguin, be the penguin. It's like, I don't see any penguins but us, because all these other people are not exiting the world stage. They're stuck within the Truman Show. They don't even see the Truman Show. 5-star says, the Gnostic views seem more true to me. Rosicrucians pop up for me left and right everywhere I research, but I'm very green in it all. Well, the Gnostic view is obvious. You can't be a truth teller. You can't be honest. I mean, you will be breaking your own damn commandment not to lie if you're going to tell me that the God of the Bible is the good guy. That's a damned lie. And he told you don't lie, but you're going to lie on his behalf. No, he's great. Nothing going on here. Everything is sane. This is the paragon of morality and virtue and goodness. No, it's actually kind of not. It's a pretty bold thing to even suggest that. Some serious whitewashing. But again, the Gnostic view is there's various views on it. I'm not like a Christian Gnostic. I'm not a Manichaean. I'm not following any of these doctrines because I don't take for granted anything as far as these myths go. However, the basic premise to me is sound. I think that knowledge is superior to belief. And believers tend to get it wrong, and they're always outsourcing, and they have to trust that whoever they're outsourcing their thinking to isn't lying to them. And how can you be so naive today? Wake Soto says the God of the Bible is an evil entity. Yeah, and I'll go so far as to say that those who defend it are part of a hive mind. A lot of them are unaware. Like, they think they're doing good. In fact, it strikes me as Stockholm syndrome. But I mean, I don't care. As long as they're not trying to convert other people, I don't care. That's been the main issue I think that everyone has with religion, is somebody's trying to tell you what to think. My problem with religion as an outsider is that they all hate each other. And that's not too strong a word. They hate each other. A lot of it's covert. Maybe it's not out in the open, but all those emotions are there. Hate, envy. I mean, you know what surprises me is that some of those docile, nice, calm, pacifistic people that I know are very quick to say they hope so-and-so gets assassinated. I know a lot of people who are totally fine with political assassination, just flippantly talking about it like it's a joke. Like, too bad that guy missed in Butler. Like, I don't care how bad your opinions are. I don't want you dead for it. And yet, most of the good Christians that I know, good people, are totally fine with seeing their political opponents murdered over the wrong opinions. And how do people get away with that internally? How do they justify saying, well, that person doesn't agree. They like a different flavor of beverage. They like a different whatever. Their opinion's different than mine. That's wrong. I must conform them to mine. Like, where do you draw the line? How much disagreement are we allowed to have? Should we completely be uniform? Well, we all better agree on the same thing. Well, look, leave it up to God then, if you really think. But they don't. And this is all tribalism. It's typical of groupthink, and I think it's just part of the control system. Mike Lito says, Tim, Jurassic Liars wants you to call him when you can. Yeah, I will when I can. We'll get back on the phone. He's a religious person, but we don't bang heads over it because he's not trying to push it on anybody. And I believe him when he says, he only talks about it because he wants people on the right side of things. Like, I get it. I think a lot of people do believe that what they say, they're not like lying about what they believe. But I'm just saying, I'm a non-believer. Leave me out of it. And honestly, if I'm wrong, I'll say that to God's face. But from what I can tell, it's a man-made institution. And they're like, but my Bible. Well, how many times has your Bible been edited? And my opinion on holy books in general is that it doesn't matter what they are. They're all interchangeable. They're all things we can get rid of. These are all frameworks that power elite have used to synchronize the masses under the agreement that the government was installed by a higher power. It's basically government worship. Lean Dion says, Kimmel and Colbert fake crying and saying, fuck ICE, cringe maxing. How brave, right? You know, I've been doing this breakdown of Wicked Part 1 and Part 2. And Wicked Part 2, called For Good, is all about Antifa. Only the witch is liberating the animals who aren't allowed to speak anymore because Trump, aka the wizard, is suppressing them and kicking them out of Oz. And the plot of the movie is that the Wicked Witch doesn't have the power because she's marginalized, she's got green skin, she's an outsider, she's wicked. She doesn't have the power to stop the wizard and to free the animals. So she's depending on her rich white liberal friends to do it. And in the song For Good, she says, I am limited, but you are unlimited, pointing at Ariana Grande. And so Ariana Grande and her fiance, who are royalty, and they're ruling over the little munchkins and the animals. Like, these are the humans, these are the rulers, and the munchkins and the animals are like the lower classes. And they set aside their privilege in, like, the prince, I guess, that she's going to marry literally joins the witch to save the animals. He actually dies for the cause. He gets crucified, no less. Comes back as the straw man. But the point of it is, that was the theme of the movie, that they have to use their power and their privilege to fight the system, and that's how they win. So I said, this is the subtext. This is how we're being sold these new martyrs. The 37-year-old Renee Good, 37-year-old Alex Pretty. These are exemplars. Everyone should do this. And if you look at Twitter and X, who's calling for civil war? Who's calling for violence against ICE? Essentially, people that look like Alex Pretty or Renee Good. People in those same identity groups. Because this is all identity politics. Well, I mean, I pointed this out. Like, this is obviously how these ideas are being marketed. They're selling you these ideas through the movies, reinforcing them with the celebrities. And I was describing, this is the consistent messaging. So I get to class, and the professor in English Comp decides to talk about this for the time being. And what they said was, it's very convenient or useful to us that we have two white, privileged activists getting killed, because now people are paying attention, suggesting that if these were minorities, if they were green-skinned witches, nobody would have noticed. You see, they have to make this story, or the story is now relevant to more people because of who the victims were. And I'm saying, yeah, this is design. To me, this is evidence that this is scripted and staged, because they're manufacturing martyrs that are target marketed to a demographic that will react in a predictable way. All right, going through your comments. Dead Turtle says, what the hell? Hey, if you haven't seen For Good. So Wicked Part 1, and by the way, it's notable that the actress who plays the Wicked Witch has Elvis's birthday, since we're talking about Elvis and all this. Because at the end of the first episode, and she represents the left, the green movement. She represents Antifa. She recognizes that the wizard is actually a fascist, controls the propaganda. He's enslaving the animals. The gold's fake. The system is fake. The news is fake. And she's trying to expose it. And he tries to shut her down. What does she do? She EMPs the Emerald City. And the Emerald City is the nickname for Seattle. So you have Seattle EMP, which has been a reoccurring theme in predictive programming, but now it's coming from the witch, who again symbolizes the left, just like Joker does. It's all code. The Joker, kill the rich, the green hair, representing someone falling through the cracks, mentally ill, fighting the rich. Same thing with this wicked witch. And Trump is who they are intending with the Wizard of Oz. And it opens up with the witch going around liberating the animals from forced labor. Just like as we look at the news, the anti-ICE protesters are disrupting the attempts at the kidnappings and the deportations. And that's a big theme also in part 1 and 2, is that the animals that can talk are being kidnapped. And the munchkins aren't allowed to ride the trains. I mean, it's pretty obvious. It's very heavy-handed. I think it's ham-fisted, just like most of this propaganda. But the timing of the release is significant. The timing of this coming out just in time for this particular incident. And if you look at how they use the word good throughout the movie and for good, sacrificing for the greater good, it was 100% predictive programming for Renee Good. So we were talking about this, though, because of the symbolism of green. Not coincidentally, at the Golden Globes, you have Mark Ruffalo, instead of paying attention to himself and his selfishness, steps out of his bubble. What does he do? He uses his platform to advocate for ICE. He's being good. And he's wearing the pin that says, be good. Not insignificant also is the fact that he was in Mickey 17 playing a Trump-like character who survives an assassination attempt with only a little bit of blood on his cheek. This is consistent because a lot of the activist actors on the world stage are usually portraying roles that are relative to this, to whatever it is they're being activists for. Like Robert De Niro, very Trump deranged. He portrays a Trump-esque character in Machete, who gets shot at while at the podium, ranting about illegal immigrants. Mark Ruffalo is also the Green Hulk. Green symbolism has been consistent. That's why I think it's notable that anti-ICE, Antifa-friendly, anti-Trump band Green Day are opening for the Super Bowl. Jamarin says, what's on your mind when you're being subject to PSYOP programming in school? Are you rolling your eyes? No, I'm just there to learn. I take it very seriously. I mean, I'm just learning how to write. Just standardized format for, especially what we're doing here as we get into the tabloid. I want to use MLA format. But yeah, I'm just there to become a better writer. I mean, honestly, I'm not bothered by other people not having a clue about how much they've been propagandized. It's not like you can change it. I have no interest in debating people or flaunting the fact that I think that they're wrong. Like, I literally do not care what people believe. If they're believers, I just say, let them at it. Not wasting my time. Nor do I find it like you're asking if I laugh about it or like, I'm just like, I'm aware of it. You know, I'm objective. I'm an outsider. I'm a, what do you call it? An alien. I'm an alien anthropologist, and I'm looking at this from the outside. So I'm not even engaged enough to care. I just know where they're coming from. Like, if somebody gives me one opinion, I can pretty much tell you what all of their other opinions will be. And people don't want to hear it because they don't want to know how programmed they are, because they think that they're free thinkers because they have a menu with so many options that it looks like there's a lot of differences here. But no, they're all in the same closed informational system. But no, I'm specifically there for the art classes and also to learn how to improve my writing for the purposes of the IPS Insider tabloid. I was already working on a journalism degree when I ran out of funding. But I'm kind of back and forth, and I'm staying very close to where this campus is. And I just decided, why not add a little structure to my life, get some work study, get back into an office space, because I don't have any sort of leash. There's nobody telling me what to do, no pitchforks jabbing into my back anymore, no emotional minefields to navigate every day. Things are so calm. I've been experiencing this inner peace for a little more than 3 months now, and I've never had this before. It's always been chaos, fight or flight, unpredictability, where I wouldn't know where I'm going to be in the next 10 minutes. Like I never had a sense of stability. And now that I do, it's been kind of strange. It's like every day I'm out at the edge of town drawing, doing paintings of landscapes. Like, when did life get so calm? And it'd be very easy to just go with the flow and slow down, but that's not really my personality. So it didn't take me long to figure out how to get busy again and how to add a lot of structure, because we need forward momentum. This think tank has a purpose. We're not competing with the mind controlled. We're not competing with the red pill mules who don't know that what they're disseminating is establishment propaganda. We're establishing our own separate branch of media, our own separate viewpoint. Michael Lito says, yes, ataraxia. Yeah, exactly. Peace of mind. It's real. And what I would suggest here is that the purpose of the mind war is to keep your mind at war, to keep you in a state of uncertainty, insecurity, instability, and fear, because that's using up your resources. It's diminishing what you can do, your creative output, your focus, your time. That's the primary weapon of mind war, is emotional manipulation and essentially narrowing your focus, especially the idea that you're in the end of times. That's very much a part of the program here. You're always at the end of the world. It's World War III, Civil War. Which is it? Aliens are coming. The comet's going to hit us. Wherever you look, we're in the end times. And if you step outside of that, well, what's the result? Well, I've unplugged enough. Like, it's not that I don't give a damn. It's not like I don't care, but I'm just not reactive. I'm not triggered. I'm removed enough that I don't have that sense of urgency. And some truthers have a problem with this. The ones who are habitually agitated and they think they're fighting the system by doom scrolling, they'll say, oh yeah, you just love cops. You just love ICE. You just want the National Guard to put their boot on your face. Like, and then jab a vax in your neck and spray your face with chemtrails. I'm like, what are you talking about? None of that stuff has ever happened to you. You're basically a propaganda mule. You're spreading agitprop on behalf of your enslaver, of your mind controller. You're disseminating the mind control toxins, the mind control propaganda to everyone else, and you think you're doing a favor. Crying wolf year after year for what? Where's the wolf? But no, they look down on me. I get truthers looking down on me because I'm not in a tizzy. But if you look into the origins of skepticism, when it first was developed as a stable philosophical model or posture, it was said to have led to peace of mind. And moreover, that this state of quiescence or calmness of mind is actually the state you want to be in a conflict. So let's say there really is a conflict. Aliens come, ocean levels are rising, skies falling, nukes, everything starts happening at once. Who do you want to follow? The people who've been freaking out for the last 30 years, or the calm person in the room who has an assessment that maybe is a little more informed? Like, I'm going to be the calm person in the room when everyone else is losing their head. Then you can add into it the long-term cumulative effects of stress. And I think beliefs are important as far as, or your presuppositions. Like, what is your baseline level of anxiety about the world? Like, if you walk around thinking that the world's going to end, you have this bias confirmation that will help fill that. It creates these echo chambers. Wayne Dion says, the problem I find is the believers are being more radicalized with every op. So in a sense, the fakery becomes real. Well, yeah, what we're looking at here is the operating systems that people have. Their frames of reference are being manipulated with extreme agitprop propaganda, just stuff that's designed to mold not only how they see the world and themselves, but their threat levels and who they feel threatens them. And yeah, it's all manufactured, but it really does alter people. I call them mind war casualties. And just like religions radicalize people into hating the non-believers, so too does media. Look at left and right. I see endless TikTok videos of Antifa types basically saying stuff like, oh, if you come to my restaurant, you're wearing a MAGA hat, we're going to spit in your food. Or you come to my practice and you're a MAGA hat, we're going to inject you with some kind of some sort of paralyzing agent. I mean, I've seen some very disturbing videos of even doctors saying that they would refuse service, refuse treatment. Like, the hostility is real. But this is not new. This has always been done by religion. So if you look at media in that context, that the mainstream media globally is the de facto world state church, then it shouldn't surprise us that the true believers are full of hate and vitriol, condemnation and judgment, and self-righteousness. Again, another strike against religion. Look how religion warps people's minds. Jamarian says the distortions that exist inside the mental plane come into the physical plane with enough energy and momentum. Sort of. I mean, there is a big element of self-fulfilling prophecy. Absolutely. One of the biggest tells, if you're looking at a PSYOP, is the response to it. Is the response to it perfectly split down the middle, left or right? If there's no room for like a calm middle ground, it's probably a PSYOP. And we're not the calm middle ground, because there isn't a middle ground. It's either left or right. The political horseshoe theory has actually been turned into a model and implemented. We're not in the middle ground. We're outside. So the left and right political horseshoe model, which is like a circle, but it doesn't quite join at the end because the fringes tend to resemble each other, that exists within the closed system, which I call the world stage. We are not operating within the world stage perspective. What makes our perspective, the off-world stage, different, qualitatively different, is that we include in our assessment the long-term pattern of media fakery and its effect on the present news cycle. Like, let's say you never heard any conspiracy or any sort of theories about how space travel might be fake. And you turn on the news for the first time, the space news, and you watch a rocket go up. Well, you have no frame of reference to say, oh, that's probably fake. You'd have no reason to, because you're looking at it from the perspective of this is what they say it is. Now, if you spent the last 30 years looking at space travel and media fakery and you have a lot of doubts, when you see the rocket go off, you have a different perspective. You're more informed. You're like, well, this agency has the potential to lie, the facilities to lie, the capabilities, the habit of lying. So I'm not going to take this one at face value. So the person B has more information when they're looking at the same exact news broadcast. There's a continuity. They're cognizant of previous fakery. So if you're not cognizant of previous fakery or the fakeability of news itself, you don't have the off-world stage perspective. If you don't have the off-world stage perspective, then you exist in a paradigm in which real and fake have been merged. If you don't know that a fake timeline has been superimposed over the real one that we live through, if you don't know that, If you can't delineate between the two, then you are, by definition, programmed. To be deprogrammed is to separate the two, to recognize that they fuse real and fake in the present, in the news. But in the past, it's successfully done. The fake news becomes history. And if that's not your frame of reference, you're not going to get this. You need to be cognizant of the fact that our history has been compromised and bent. It's not just fake news, because fake news piles up. And the accumulated fake news creates a vastly different picture. If you look at it long term, what they have done is they have put our consensus worldview into this subjective model, a hyper reality. And it's even more true now than ever with the advent of generative AI and how exponentially these are growing, these are improving. It's pretty much a guarantee that maybe less than a year we'll be past, if we're not already there, we'll be past the point of no return. You can't tell real from fake. You know, in fact, I'm always going through X, and I'm always noticing just how people are falling for stuff. Like, so here's one where I was watching this video of this blonde girl, short, maybe 5'6", and she's boxing an ICE agent and pushes him back. And then you see a blast of water from a fire hose, you know, shove her across the ground. So a lot of people are watching this and they're like, F-A-F-O. You know, she found out. And you have a lot of people essentially praising the cops for dealing with this woman like this anti-ICE activist. And then you have other people who are really mad about it. So David Allen says, it's not patriotic to watch a citizen under siege brutalized by authoritarian goons. Someone else laughs. Oh, she's completely airborne. Someone else says, she's an idiot. Someone else says, oh my God, is she still alive? So we're going through these comments of people responding to this woman who was fighting a cop, kicking his ass, and then she got hit with a fire hose. Well, anyway, this video has been viewed, as of right now, 1.7 million times. Eventually, someone figured it out, that this is AI. So people are responding to this fake thing as though it's real, giving their real opinions about it, showing you the division. Half the people think it's funny, half the people think it's horrible. But they both agree it's real. This is like every single psyop. It's half is for or pro, the other half is anti. And what the pro and the anti agree upon is that the thing itself is real. So this is kind of a microcosm of a psyop. Something fake in media gets out there and everybody reacts like it's real, and they react upon, or they react according to their political position. Eventually people got mad and said AI slop. I'm sorry, it's not AI slop if it fooled 99% of the people. We can stop saying AI slop. I wish this were real. Other person says, poor homeless person getting a shower at taxpayer expense. I think she's out cold. This is AI, people do better. Please stop with the AI. There are people clamoring for labels. Will you please label this? Like, sorry, no one's going to be there to tell you real or fake. If you rely on some external authority to tell you what's real or fake, you're in a subjective universe. They control it. We need a new priesthood to comb through media and to tell us what is true. We can't tell for ourselves. We have become visually illiterate. You know, like, oh, we can't read the Bible. The priesthood must interpret the word for us. Well, we can't discern real from fake through media, so we need the government controls, regulations to somehow intervene because we are lost. I probably won't watch the next president. I mean, no one's going to be as entertaining as this one. You know, whatever you think about him and his policies, some of the things he says are just unintentionally or maybe intentionally comedic. He was talking about Alex Preddy and Renee Good. And he says he feels worse about Renee Good because her parents were Trump fans. And he says this stuff unironically. Like, well, it was terrible that they both got murdered, but, you know, her parents were Trump fans, so that's a little bit more of a tragedy. Lean Dion says, cue third eye auto hoaxing. Well, yeah, if you're not able to tell an event is real or fake without relying on what's on the screen, you're screwed. It's already, that's something that we are definitely past the point of no return. If you have not discerned media fakery by now, by means other than CGI glitches or grinning crisis actors or bad production value, you're lost. And you're lost because as the visuals get perfected, you're not going to have anything to grab onto. What's going to be your basis for calling something fake? You need to have some objective analysis, but it's going to be indistinguishable from objective reality. They put a hoodwink over your head, a wool sack over your eyes. We don't have that problem here. We've been describing this concept called the blindfolded skeptic. And the idea is that if there's an event that's fake, you should be able to make the case for it in a dark room with no recourse to video. If you can't tell or convince your neighbor that 9/11 was fake to the best of your knowledge, without relying on, hey, look at the plane, what do you see? Without relying on the visuals, then you're not going to have any way to do this in the future. We don't rely on the visuals anymore because we can assume it's going to look real. Like, I was one of the first to admit the Charlie Kirk thing looks real. Doesn't mean it is real. And this whole idea of generative AI causing chaos in society was the theme in Mountainhead, which came out last year. So here's a tweet. This is getting out of control. All signs point to civil war. Trump must reform ICE. ICE officers must take their masks off and be held accountable. So this guy's pretty mad. And here's a video that's been viewed nearly 1 million times. And what you see are NPD officers arresting an ICE agent, pulling his mask off. It's like this brutal scene in the subway. And so a lot of people are saying this needs to be done. New York City needs to stand strong and take down ICE. Well, it turns out the video is AI generated. But you go to the comments, you wouldn't know that. Why are people making videos to make it appear that cops are fighting ICE and then releasing the stuff as though it's real? And the comments here are well thought out. And the people, if you look at it, it's very revealing, though, as to the situational awareness, which is basically nil. Clayton Kirkwood says, NYPD is wrong. These are corrupt officers. The feds have jurisdiction. Yeah, ICE is allowed to make those arrests. Federal law gives them authority. And sanctuary city rules in New York City only limit what local agencies can do to help. They can't stop ICE. Anyway, it's fueled these discussions over whether or not NYPD should be fighting ICE. But again, thousands of comments before somebody notices it's fake. Fake until proven real was one of the axioms of the Auto Hoax 101. It's in the new handbook as well. Fake until proven real. And we used to catch flack for that. People would say, you can't say everything's fake. You guys just think everything's fake. And I was like, well, no, that's a straw man. Our caveat here is it's fake until proven real if there are hoax indicators, if there's predictive concurrent programming deviations from standard protocol, immediately implementable political agendas, celebrity endorsements. There are a number of things that indicate something is likely to be a hoax. That's when you raise the bar and you say it's fake until proven real. What's the actual evidence? But the approach of fake until proven real when we're examining media is actually the smart way to go now. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. Even the people who opposed us going with that interpretation when we first started using it. Copaesthetic says math requires no visuals. If it's not adding up, it doesn't make sense. Yeah, in a lot of ways, it's kind of that simple. I mean, it's not that difficult to point out elements that we should consider to be suspicious. One of the big ones to me is always the perfect division down the middle, but usually you just got to wait. It doesn't take very long before the indicators start showing themselves. Jamarian May says the AI rollout is integral to the alien PSYOP as an intermediary. This technology will be used to bridge communication. Well, HAL 9000, Skynet, there's so many versions of this. Another way I kind of look at it is if we're given a new paradigm, scientific, replacing the traditional ones, but retaining the old elements, it could just be that AI and the speculation about it being sentient is just part of this replacement religion. That's why I'm really pushing back against the idea that AI is sentient. And I push back against simulation theory because I'm like, you guys are just repackaging monotheism. But there is certainly this repeated theme of mind viruses and a mind virus pandemic necessitating some kind of global shutdown and perhaps even causing it. Like Mountainhead. Mountainhead is a movie that portrays Musk unleashing chaos into the world through social media. And Musk has repeatedly shown up in various movies, in various personages, various characters with the same agenda. Naked Gun, he's Kane with the plot device that turns people violent. In The Madness, he's the billionaire who finances the Nazis online, causes Antifa to arm up. And that was all preparing us for No Kings. But yeah, just as we had to build up to 2020 of pandemic and zombie outbreaks, and zombie outbreak movies are just quarantine movies. We were prepared for that. We were psychologically prepared for quarantine, for lockdowns, for fearing the unvaxxed. They set the stage long in advance. And we've been watching them set the stage for a mind virus pandemic, something that justifies or necessitates the clamping down over the free flow of information for the same exact rationale. The healthy mind virus super spreaders are endangering us all because the people with mental illness or compromised mental immune systems will catch the mind viruses and do bad things. So when something inevitably happens, they'll say it's because of the internet, because of instigators, because of Discord. Look how many times they were blaming right-wing racist mass shooters on Discord. The Discord servers caused it. And then in 2022, they flipped the script, and now suddenly it's about left-wing shooters radicalized on Reddit. And they had the right-wingers agreeing, oh, we got to do something about Reddit. Left-wingers, we got to do something about Discord. So both sides are saying, we must do something to regulate the free speech of the other side. And the government's like, yeah, we agree. Perfect triangulation. That's why I say you must reject the anti-position. Because if you're in the anti-position, you're triangulated against the pro. The pro-position and the anti-position are set up in this dialectic controlled from above. And you can't claim to not be mind controlled if you're taking a position on pro or anti, if you're in this triangulation. And I'm outside of it. I'm not fighting this info war. So we were talking about the advent of conspiracy culture and how it's always been controlled. It's always been a government-controlled counterculture. And that's why you have Candace Owens doing what she's doing. Government-controlled counterculture. She's ruining the image of the person who doesn't trust mainstream news. Well, a lot of this started with Stanley Kubrick. And we were talking about this in Discord, how Dr. Strangelove was screening on November 22nd. They canceled it because of the JFK assassination, which I would argue was directed by Stanley Kubrick. But what's interesting is they were talking about how the communists were putting fluoride in the water to control people's minds. And fluoride in the water is one of the bigger conspiracy theories. No one talks about it anymore. Now chemtrails are kind of the thing, but it used to be you can't drink the water because of fluoride, can't breathe the air because of chemtrails, but they always have the water thing. Well, that started in the Stanley Kubrick movie. That really popularized it. In fact, Alex Jones used to sell water filters, and every 5 minutes, it was a break for a water filter. And he'd make claims like the fluoride in your water is reducing your IQ by 10 points. He would say, oh, the people who don't believe you have the fluoride stare, the fluoride heads. And then it became the vaccinated, the vaxxed and the fluoride heads. But anyway, we were talking about Stanley Kubrick has this influence in conspiracy subculture. So here you got fluoride in the water with Dr. Strangelove, which also ties the JFK in, as I'll show you. But then he's also associated with the moon landing fakery, which is a limited hangout. They let that out there, that this was fake. And Kubrick has been pointed at as likely the director, which I think is accurate, but he wasn't a whistleblower. It was predictive programming as usual in all his content. There's these reveals that I think they let that out to create the counter narrative. And then with Eyes Wide Shut, you have the basic QAnon story, the deep state, the Epstein Island stuff is kind of built into that. But anyway, they had to postpone the screening of Dr. Strangelove because, of course, 11/22/1963. But then there's more. There's a final scene that was infamously cut off of it. At one point in the scene, a custard pie strikes the American president in the face. And the general says, gentlemen, our beloved president has been infamously struck down by a pie in the prime of his life. The scene was scrapped by Kubrick due to the unfortunate and coincidental timing of the movie's planned release, 11/22/63. Dr. Strangelove also has some 9/11 foreshadowing. I mean, this is not new. It's not about Stanley Kubrick alone. It is systemic fakery, and the government has always used movies as a way to promote their fake events, to saturate your minds with these ideas, to advertise, like product placement, stage historic events before they happen. The Kennedys, in fact, JFK let John Frankenheimer use the White House for part of one of his movies he was filming, the Manchurian Candidate director, who then drove RFK to the Ambassador Hotel in 1968, where he was killed by a Manchurian Candidate, a mind-controlled assassin. I mean, that's pretty blatant. I mean, the director of the movie that offered predictive programming for JFK's assassination drove JFK's brother to his assassination by his own mind-controlled assassin. And they're not any more subtle about it. In fact, they're very unsubtle with the predictive programming these days. They're so unsubtle about it that the media is frequently noticing eerie coincidences, tragic coincidences. What they won't say are intentional coincidences. Truthers will say, oh, guys, those are just coincidences. Sorry, that argument doesn't work anymore. Just coincidences. No, I agree with you. They are coincidences. There is a coincidence here and there between fake events and movies. But what they're missing is that these are intentional, coordinated, overlapping of themes and messages. And the propaganda field is going through every possible vector to reinforce. I mean, it's a field of information, concerted messaging, drilling it into your head in advance as it happens, and then afterward. It's formulaic. And to the people who still think that the movies that are reflecting, quote, reality are just merely coincidentally doing so, have no way to explain the concurrent drills that go along with the fake events as well. And it's such a formulaic thing that we predict these things. Oh, if this is fake, there's going to be drills. If this is fake, there's going to be concurrent programming and predictive programming and some political agenda tomorrow. Like, there's a lot of things that we can say will occur if it's fake. When we announce these things, we wait a few minutes, it all rolls out. Oh, if it's fake, there's going to be a very conspicuous 33 attached to it. We caught the shooter 33 hours after. And in our breakdowns and our mind maps, we've gone into the nuance to recognize that there are very consistent uses of certain elements, colors, numbers, and archetypes that have been in use for a very long time that are attached to certain messages. Like the Batman Joker movies. Batman and Joker movies have been for years repositories for predictive programming. Like they're platforming the psyops of the day. Do you remember the Joker shooter at the theater in Aurora, Colorado? And that's a big one. Okay, so there was a Sean Penn movie. It was a gangster movie. It was called Gangster Squad. So the story goes, a group of movie goers enter the theater in Aurora and they sit down to watch a movie, and the trailer for a Sean Penn movie comes out, Gangster Squad. And in the trailer, these gangsters are in a movie theater with machine guns, and they shoot through the screen and kill everybody in the audience. After the trailer, before Batman starts, the Joker killer comes into the room and shoots everybody. And that's not the only example. Yeah, James Holmes. Of course, this was the screening of Dark Knight Rises. Here's your wrench. You earned it, D. Nixon. Well, down the street, there was a mass casualty simulation going on. I believe it's called like Rocky Mountain Medical. But you can look it up. I'll be putting this into our encyclopedia of hoaxes. But there was indeed a drill going on down the street. And tons of Batman Joker programming surrounding that thing. But that's been the case for all of these movies. These Christopher Nolan, Jonathan Nolan, all their movies contain predictive programming, same body of symbols, always flaunting the 33s for some reason, which I take to mean hoax code. But yeah, Gangster Squad. The trailer preceded what really happened. And I say that all in quotes, of course. Now, I went over to Aurora, Colorado, because they had this monument set up for the Aurora shooting, for the victims. And it consists of, it's a memorial that they put outside of their courthouse. And it was basically, I think it's a bunch of doves. Oh, no, not doves. It's, let me pull this up because I went over to this thing. So if you go to Aurora, there's a theater shooting memorial. And it has all these cranes like flying up in a big pyramid. How does a community heal after a tragic event? On Saturday, a crowd gathered near the Aurora Municipal Center. And the sculpture is 83 4.5 foot tall metal cranes sweeping towards the sky. So I went to go see this monument, in Aurora, Colorado, and I was live streaming there. And I saw people walking around it, people walking all around this area. And I thought, look at all these people grieving. I thought these must be family members of the people who died in the shooting. And the news crews were recording from the sidelines what appeared to be mourners walking around this memorial. Well, I get close, nobody there is mourning or paying attention to the cranes. There was a Pokemon hunt going on, and you had all these Pokemon people with their phones just walking around because apparently there were some Pokemons hiding around the courthouse. And I thought, this has got to be a conspiracy. They put some Pokemons around this monument to ensure a crowd. So when the news comes by, it looks like there's a bunch of mourners looking at the new monument. No, they weren't looking at the monument. I was the only one there looking at the monument. Everyone else there was hunting Pokemon. So I was live streaming the event, calling it out as, what I thought it was. And I got my YouTube channel pulled. That was back at the time when in the middle of a live stream, they would cancel my channel. They would pull it. JRGMTY says, a company called Magnuson was involved in the construction of the World Trade Center and Levi's Stadium. Fascinating. I saw ICE had projected an anti-ICE animation onto the Twin Towers jail facility in LA. I've been noticing these references. Okay, I see it. MKA, a Seattle-based structural and engineering firm that provided engineering services for the WTC and Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara. Fascinating. And of course, we're talking about architecture. You can't really separate that from masonry. All the architecture, all the big monuments are part of the storyline as well here. Highly significant architecture. The One World Trade Tower opened on 1,776 feet high. Has a great deal of significance we're going to have to get into soon. And the Seattle Space Needle has been a subject of a lot of predictive programming and speculation for some time. And I think it has a number of elements to it to note. One of them is that it represents a UFO and a tractor beam. But simultaneously, it is still a tower that reaches to the heavens, like the One World Trade Tower. It has the same underlying Tower of Babel symbolism. And the Tower of Babel is known for, of course, the fall, which is part of the bigger script here. If you look at America as Babylon, and this was foreshadowed very recently in Megalopolis, Make Rome Great Again. And it all has to do with a 9/11-ing like event. But I don't think that they would 9/11 or take down the One World Trade Tower, even though symbolically that's what they're planning to do. The Tower of Babel has to fall, but it would be redundant to do so again in the same spot. So that's where I think the Space Needle comes into play. I think the Space Needle could in fact serve as the same essential component in this scripted event or historic event, this symbol, but with the added element of course, being a modernized version of it, a modernized obelisk. And of course, the recent movie, Final Destination Bloodlines, really does explain this predictive programming for 9/11 at the Twin Towers and the Space Needle predictive programming, and how it's all part of the same essential psyop. And if you haven't seen the new movie with the Space Needle as like the main theme, Final Destination, it's worth watching, because the first one is about planes crashing and this prophecy that everyone's going to die on a plane. So she gets off the plane and everyone dies. Well, that's the first one. And it basically shows you before 9/11, a lot of 9/11 like imagery. Well, this new one that came out takes place in the past. And the explanation is it's the granddaughter of the Prophet in the first one. And she's going to the Space Needle on the day that it opens. They have this new elevator called the Skyview. And she has this vision of it being destroyed, and she saves everybody by preventing it. And that was the act that made the Grim Reaper vow revenge against her bloodline. And that's why the rest of the movies occur. But it's about this idea that the original tragedy was going to be the Space Needle, but then it happened to be this thing with the planes, but then eventually goes back to the Space Needle. It's all very much, I think, foreshadowing. But if you haven't seen it, interestingly enough, it had some real life counterpart, because the Space Needle had just opened up their new elevator, just like in the movie, at the same time the movie came out. We did a pretty thorough breakdown of that movie and all it contains. And my takeaway on it, of course, is that, yeah, the next major 9/11ing event, the next big monument to be taken down, if you go solely based on the predictive content, it looks like it would be that. Although I'm still divided on it, because we've been looking at that for some time, and 3/11 Seattle did in fact serve as the center for a new 9/11 scale event, which was 2020. So maybe that already came true, just not in specifically the way that the movies depicted. And instead of the Space Needle being the center of the focus, it became what? Well, the needle. But again, it still could be in play. Now, you mentioned the architect for the World Trade Center and the Levi Stadium. The same architect from the Century City Twin Towers did the World Trade Center. And in Fight Club, he's given the speech about the gelatin explosives wrapping the columns of buildings. And of course, at the end of the movie, the buildings all fall. Well, as he's talking about gelatin explosives, he's in front of the Century City Twin Towers. And I think this is a direct reference to Gelatin, the art group that was staying in the Twin Towers in the year 2001. And they said, we're doing this big art thing. And it apparently involved some production elements, involved taking windows off. They were up there in the towers. What were they actually doing? Well, there's speculation that this art group are the ones who wired the demo. And you can find their plan, like, oh, you want to see our art show? It's going to be on 9/11. Well, we never got to see it because the towers went down. Or that was it. JRG says the MKA company also built a huge needle tower in Doha. Well, there's quite a bit to unpack here. We'll probably do this as part of the Great Deconstruction, go to every monument. It's highly significant also that the Space Needle became a historic monument on 4/19, which is the date that Waco was incinerated, and also the date that McVeigh retaliated for that with the Oklahoma City bombing. The Space Needle in Seattle was designated a historic landmark on April 19th, 1999. You know, I'm really looking forward to this. I'll put this in my notes, because we're not just going to every fake event and deconstructing the fake event. We're deconstructing fake people, or scripted people, which might be a better way of putting it, meta-scripted. I have a series I'm working on of ebooks called Meta-Scripted. Meta-Scripted Donald Trump, Meta-Scripted Elon Musk, Meta-Scripted Space Needle, where we're going to go through every one of these facets of this script that's superimposed over reality. And we're going to show how it exists in the mind of the, well, in the consensus, but in the minds of the media consumers. How it's been presented, the repeated themes. Because if you were aware, if you were off world stage 30 or 40 years ago, you would have expected 9/11 to go down as it did. as we are frequently expecting the fake events that we're witnessing. But there's been a consistent buildup as of late. And there's always, always hype. And so you have to recognize that sometimes it's just the threat of the thing is the psyop itself. But there has been quite a significant buildup for fallout, for lockdowns, for mind viruses that precipitate some calamity that necessitate locking down the internet because of the ideas. And I think that's kind of what one of the common denominators has been as of late. And now we're seeing in real time the public on X responding to every fake thing as though it's real. They're completely helpless. And I see some people laughing and saying, oh, you people are fooled by anything. And I'm like, well, you're also in a simulated reality. That's the irony of it, is that we didn't just begin the era of deep fake. Like everyone's like, oh, now things are fake. We can't tell real from fake. Sorry, but you couldn't tell real from fake before this. There's nothing new here. It's a new iteration. So it's kind of ironic to see one group of people calling another group of people foolish for not being able to see through fake stuff. Meanwhile, they live in a fabricated reality. They live in a Truman Show for all intents and purposes. All right, well, we'll continue this research in the Discord server. I want to point out that Neptune entered Aries on January 26th. And the significance here is that it had previously ingressed into Aries in 1861, April 13th, the day after the Civil War started. And so what does that mean? Well, Aries, of course, the ram, but Aries is associated with Mars, the war god. And then Neptune, to me, the most significant correlation here with Neptune is, of course, it's another version of Poseidon. And Poseidon has been in the news quite a lot because of Putin's weapon. The Poseidon is a Russian nuclear-powered, armed, unmanned vehicle, a doomsday weapon that can supposedly travel great ranges and can create radioactive tsunamis. Well, where have we heard of radioactive tsunamis before? I haven't seen it yet, but somebody said I need to watch Paradise, because apparently Paradise, the movie, and I think the movie has, or the show has something to do with bunkers as well. I think it's in season 2. In the 2025 Hulu series Paradise, a cataclysmic multi-layered disaster, specifically a supervolcano, triggers a massive 300-foot tsunami combined with nuclear strikes from Russia and China, causing the apocalypse, and the main characters escape into a bunker. Global tsunamis, radioactive tsunamis. And I think we can also add to this the fact that first of all, the Nolan brothers. So the Nolan brothers, are responsible for, you got Oppenheimer, the nuke, but you also have Fallout, which is about what happens after the nuke, the bunkers. Fallout Shelter number 33. Well, the Odyssey is coming out this summer, and it's directed by Christopher Nolan. So what does the Odyssey have to do with this? Well, I think it has to do with Poseidon. It's Poseidon that's the main antagonist of Odysseus. And his journey kicks off after he escapes Calypso. And last year, the big news was the Calypso capsule that stranded the astronauts. And I said, wait, they're on their space odyssey and they get stranded. Is there some kind of follow-up here where Poseidon hits, because we're talking about this nuke? And then we find out that there's a movie called The Odyssey coming out, directed by Christopher Nolan. And again, the Nolans are going to get full credit for the fake nuke when it happens. So I kind of see The Odyssey as possibly portentous of the Poseidon, this idea of this sea-based attack, nuclear submarine, which is pretty much what the program has been calling for. But anyway, you can look at the programming going into the minds of the masses as an indicator of what's to come, because the limiting factor on what they can fake is what the public will believe. And the public is pretty much ready to believe in intelligent AI, alien invasions, nuke disasters, EMPs, and mind viruses. All right, well, thanks again for everyone for your comments. Appreciate the channel support. Looking forward to interesting times ahead. There's a link below. I'm going to be updating the archives tonight, and the latest replays are on ips.monster. And if you're on YouTube, it goes to members only after about 24 hours. So I'm not going to cut it off if you're watching it in the middle. Lean Dion says, Spielberg got us covered in the AI alien government disclosure ops. Yeah, I need to rewatch AI. He was working on that with Kubrick. And then the disclosure stories coming up this summer, Age of Disclosure. And when you look at this thing in Minneapolis, we all noticed the dinosaur and the shark, Jurassic Park and Jaws. I was like, is that a shout out? Did Spielberg direct that particular fake event? But regardless, the public's ready to believe this stuff. If they see it on the news, on Hulu, they see it in the theaters, it's suddenly in their frame of reference. Isn't it strange, though, that just having it, quote, out there, just putting these ideas in the frame of reference suddenly makes it seem possible? It's the Overton window. The movie screen has become the Overton window. And of course, the Overton window refers to the range of ideas the public will accept at any given time. And you can open it a little wider. You can expand it depending on how the I guess gullible the public is. But right now, the movie screen is the Overton window. And if they see it on the movies, it's probably going to happen for real. Like, the public is not going to question it. All right. Well, we will continue this conversation in Discord. Thank you.